My name is Sarah Mitchell. For 10 years, my brother-in-law Jake thought I was nothing more than a soft-spoken school teacher living in Texas. At family dinners, he would joke that I was too nice to survive in the real world. What he didn't know was that before becoming a teacher, I had spent 20 years in the U.S. Army Special Operations Division. And I never told anyone, not even him. I left that life behind after losing friends overseas. I wanted peace, a normal life. Then one rainy Tuesday night, everything changed. My name is Sarah Mitchell. For 10 long years, my brother-in-law Jake saw me as nothing more than a soft-spoken school teacher, tucked away in the quiet suburbs of Texas. At our weekly family dinners, he'd lean back with a smirk and joke that I was far too nice to survive a single day in the real world. I'd just smile, pass the mashed potatoes, and keep my secrets hidden behind a polite exterior. What he didn't know, what no one knew, was that before I ever stepped foot in a classroom, I had spent 2 decades in the U.S. Army Special Operations Division. I had operated in shadows, moved through ghost cities, and survived scenarios Jake couldn't even imagine in his nightmares. I never told a soul, not even him. I walked away from that life after losing too many brothers and sisters overseas. I traded my rifle for a red pen because I craved peace. I wanted a normal life, a quiet life, where the only thing I had to worry about was lesson plans. Then came one rainy Tuesday night that shattered the illusion forever, the message. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the rhythmic scratching of my pen against paper the only sound in the room as I graded my students' essays. Suddenly, my phone vibrated against the wood, a sharp, buzzing intrusion. It was a text from my younger sister, Emily. Just 3 words glowed on the screen. Blue Lantern 7. My blood didn't just chill. It turned to ice. 20 years ago, before my first deployment, Emily and I had established a series of emergency code phrases. Blue Lantern 7 was the ultimate distress signal. It meant, I am in immediate danger. Come now. Do not involve the police yet. Emily had never used it. Not once in 20 years. Not until that night. The drive. I didn't hesitate. The teacher persona evaporated, replaced instantly by the cold, calculated instinct of an operator. I grabbed my keys, threw on a jacket, and sprinted to my car. The drive was a blur of neon lights and gray mist. Rain hammered against the windshield like 1,000 tiny drums, the wipers struggling to keep up with the deluge. My mind raced through every possibility. Emily had sounded perfectly happy when we spoke just 2 days ago. What could have happened? Who could have found her? 15 minutes later, I pulled into her driveway, killing the headlights before I reached the curb. The house was a dark silhouette against the stormy sky. No lights in the windows. No sound from the porch. It was silent, the kind of heavy, unnatural silence that precedes an ambush. I took a deep breath, feeling the old familiar weight of the world on my shoulders. Sarah the teacher was gone. The specialist was back. Does this expansion capture the tone you were looking for? Or would you like me to make the special ops side of her thoughts even more technical? The front door wasn't just unlocked. It was standing slightly ajar, swaying an inch or 2 in the wind. I didn't rush in. I moved with a silent, predatory grace I hadn't used in a decade. Inside, the house was a disaster. The sanctuary of my sister's home had been violated. A coffee table lay overturned, its legs pointing toward the ceiling like a dead animal. Shards of a broken vase crunched beneath my boots, glinting like diamonds in the dim light. Then I saw her. Emily was huddled in the far corner, her small frame trembling with silent sobs. A dark, angry bruise was already blooming across one side of her face, swelling around her eye. The moment her gaze met mine, she completely broke down, her voice a fragile whisper that cut through me. "Sarah?" My heart shattered for a split second, but I didn't let the emotion take hold. I couldn't afford to, because right then, I heard it, the heavy, rhythmic thud of footsteps on the floorboards upstairs. Someone was coming down, and they weren't trying to be quiet. The confrontation. It was Jake. My brother-in-law stepped onto the landing, a smug, arrogant smile plastered across his face. He looked at the chaos he had caused with pride, then turned his gaze toward me. Oh, great. He let out a sharp, mocking laugh that echoed through the ruined living room. "You actually called for help, Emily? And you brought the little school teacher? What's she going to do, Sarah? Give me a detention." He stood there with his chest puffed out, fully expecting me to scream, to panic, or to beg him to stop. He expected a victim. Instead, I didn't say a word. I reached behind me, gripped the handle of the front door, and slowly, deliberately, engaged the deadbolt. The metallic click echoed like a gunshot in the silent room. Jake's smile didn't just fade. It vanished. He froze on the bottom step. For the first time in 10 years, he wasn't looking at nice Sarah. He was looking into my eyes, and for the first time, he saw the cold, steel-gray gaze of a woman who had seen the worst of the world and survived it. He saw a predator, and he realized, too late, that he was the one trapped in the room. Would you like me to add more detail to the transformation Sarah goes through, or should we move straight into how she handles Jake? "Jake," I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper that seemed to vibrate in the small room. "You have exactly one chance to tell me the truth about what happened here tonight." He let out a forced, nervous laugh, trying to regain his footing. "And if I don't, what are you going to do, Sarah? Scold me?" Emily reached out, her hand trembling as she tried to pull me back, fearing for my safety. But it was far too late for that. The school teacher had left the building. 20 years of buried discipline and lethal training came rushing back to the surface like a tidal wave. Without breaking eye contact, I reached into my wallet and pulled out a weathered, official military identification card, one that bore a seal he didn't recognize, but alone had struck volumes. Jake leaned in, his eyes darting across the card. Slowly, the color drained from his face until he was as white as a sheet. What is that?" he stammered, his bravado crumbling. I looked directly into his soul, my expression as cold as stone. "For 20 years, Jake, I tracked and neutralized dangerous men for a living. Men far more clever than you. And tonight, you just became my new mission. The evidence." The silence in the room was suffocating. Jake tried to sputter out a denial, his voice cracking as he scrambled for an excuse, but the trap had already been set. Emily hadn't just been a victim. She had been a witness. She handed me her phone, revealing months of secretly recorded audio and video. It was all there. The sickening thuds of his abuse, the whispered threats, the calculated manipulation, and the paper trail of a massive financial fraud he thought he'd hidden perfectly. With a few taps on my phone, I uploaded every file to a triple-encrypted secure cloud server. Then, I made a single phone call. I didn't call her parents. I didn't call the local precinct. I called a ghost, an old contact from my special ops days who now headed a high-level federal investigation unit. "It's Mitchell," I said into the receiver. "I have a file for you. It's time to move." The fall. The house of cards collapsed with terrifying speed. Within days, Federal investigators uncovered secrets that went far deeper than a domestic dispute. Jake wasn't just a bully. He was a predator in every sense. He had been systematically draining the life savings of elderly clients and forging legal documents to cover his tracks, hiding hundreds of thousands of dollars in offshore accounts. The scandal rocked the community. Neighbors who had seen him as a perfect gentleman were frozen in shock. Friends who had laughed at his jokes couldn't believe the monster living among them. The man who once thought he controlled everyone's world was suddenly a broken figure, begging for a mercy he never showed to Emily. The courtroom. Months later, we sat in the quiet, sterile atmosphere of the courtroom. When Jake was let in, he looked like a shell of the man he once was. Gone was the expensive suit. Gone was the arrogant, smug smile. He looked small. The evidence I had secured was overwhelming. It wasn't just a trial. It was a reckoning. When the judge finally spoke, the words were sharp and final, handing down a lengthy sentence that ensured Jake would be a memory long before he saw the sun as a free man again. In the heavy silence that followed, Emily reached over and squeezed my hand. When I looked at her, I saw tears filling her eyes. But for the first time in 10 years, they weren't tears of fear or pain. They were the clear, bright tears of absolute freedom. The school teacher was back, but the specialist had saved her family. This version adds a lot of punch to the ending. Does this work for your channel's storytelling style? As we walked outside, Emily asked me something. Why did you never tell anyone about your military past? I smiled. Because the strongest people don't need everyone to know they're strong. She hugged me tightly. And for the first time in years, she was safe. My brother-in-law thought I was just a harmless woman, but one secret distress code exposed everything he had spent years hiding.